Hey guys, I'm gonna make a spirit talk. We're gonna talk about some things going on. We've got a lot going on with we know that Trump looks like bombed Iran and everybody's talking about it and and we've got a lot of reactions, but a lot of people are like this moment that he just did may cause more people to wake up. I notice, like when I'm kind of looking at the YouTube algorithm, all kinds of things are popping on my radar. Not just even from Democrat, like people who might be Democratic, like or liberal, but even people that voted for Trump. There even from them. I'm starting to see some that are awakening, and even them are saying powerful things. There are certain things they're starting to wake up to, that maybe Trump's not a good guy that's been playing a bad guy to fool everybody, but he's really a good guy here to take down the deep state. Okay, are starting to awaken to it, especially because it looks like he's getting us in a war, but they're also paying attention. Oh, here comes this Palantir, and then of course, even the big beautiful bill having provisions in it that give for the next 10 years, no state in America can regulate AI whatsoever. Because the one thing MAGA doesn't want is a surveillance state. They really don't. Okay, so they're feeling very betrayed. The sooner people wake up, the better. Okay. But one of the things I was like, I think it's time to talk and just kind of break down that the game is rigged. Okay. It's it's one bird with two wings. We've got Democrat, Republican, but one wing is worse than the other. I very much acknowledge, like, whether you're Democrat or Republican, the game is rigged. And what I mean by that, okay, so let's take it this way: we've got one bird, two wings. America, for the most part, the cats are making a mess. Um, do we ever really get what we want? Is all Americans to have a living wage, to be able to afford to pay their rent without having to work two or three jobs, um, to be able to have health care so they don't have to rack up thousands of dollars in medical bills and maybe declare bankruptcy. Are they able to afford paying for groceries without having to put them on credit cards, to make it to juggle this or that? I mean, when you think about it, a lot of Americans have a ton of credit card debt, student loan debt, okay, and then trying to, and then they're working for a company and they work hard, trying to get a decent raise, maybe get a promotion, that the carrot in front of the donkey, and they're never given that raise. I've read for people, okay, they worked in a company for years, they're always trying to go for a promotion, and I'll be in the middle of the reading. Am I going to get the promotion? I keep getting passed over. And then I finally have to break it down to them. They are never going to promote you because they like you exactly where you are. You will always perform and give 110% because you're going for a promotion, and they don't want to replace you with someone else. They like what you do in that position. They want to keep you exactly where they are. So they may even take somebody that's not as qualified, working hard, or even been there that long, and give it to them because they want you exactly where you are. The system is rigged. Okay. And some of you may have experienced that. Yeah, I'd be going for this. I've been wanting that lead position, that manager position, go in this department, but they keep me exactly where I am. Exactly, the system is rigged. And then you go into, say, those annual reviews, right? You're sitting there, and then where you should really be up here in the exceeds or excellent or whatever, they keep you right down here. Oh, just keep working on this. They never quite give you what you deserve and everything. They won't totally knock you down and stuff, but they might throw in needs improvement one place just to keep you a little bit there, always kind of working and everything. But every time you go for that promotion, they keep you exactly where you are. Can I tell you how many times I've read for people career readings, and that is what is happening? Okay, even though, and then it's like, well, this is where sometimes we got to punish those people and go to a different job. And even better if you go start your own business, which very time, there are times, people are like, yeah, the system's rigged, I'm not happy and everything. And it's like, let's go for your dreams. Okay. Try to get people there. There's some books that I've read for years. I've reread. They were written by Carlos Castaneda. So many different books. Teachings of Don Juan, Journey to Ixtland, Fire from Within, Power of Silence, The Eagle's Gift. He wrote many books in the 60s, 70s, some in the 80s, A Separate Reality. Basically, Carlos, he was, at a university. I can't remember. It was somewhere in California. I can't offhand think of which one it was. And he had to write his thesis. So one of the things he wanted to investigate, because this is back in the 60s, he wanted to learn about the psychedelic plants. So he was doing some journeying into Arizona, which led him to meeting this shaman, this Toltec shaman, Yaquai Indian named Don Juan, and he ended up introducing him to power plants and gave him a whole lesson for many years on the warrior path. There's all kinds of lessons. You could always check them out in the books. I've read them, and there's not a whole lot of us left, those who kind of follow these, but we do exist. And so, one of the things that Don Juan taught, which is very powerful and very relevant, and kind of weaves into other certain spiritualities, is something called the foreign installation. He kind of exposed the game, in the book. The foreign installation, he kind of talked about there's a kind of this ancient thing, and what it is. It's almost like an alien kind of presence. Though he doesn't say aliens exactly do it, he never kind of gives exactly what is the controller, but he kind of talks about the foreign installation, how all human beings have two minds and one is not their own. And you will see this in other spiritualities, or maybe we'll talk about even ego, how ego is not really you, right? Okay. And or that voice that talks in your head kind of nonstop and says all kinds of things and can be very rooted in fear. But he says in the books, the foreign installation gave you their mind. Okay, and that's kind of part of the programming. And one of the things, that the strategies, and it takes warrior strategy with precision, is to break that mind, to get free. And then there's also even flyers that feed off the human being, that kind of come from the foreign installation, and they just feed. And if you ever feel like drained in things, that kind of stuff. But it gives a very interesting thing about how the game is rigged. And this is why, and even with my teacher, breaking from cultural norms and society that you're born into. And yes, even your parents, are kind of agents of the foreign installation, though they really don't mean to be. They want to bring you up in a good life, but there are certain things that become part of your programming. Like, say if you're born into a family and that those parents are of a certain religion, or they have an idea about who you should become, like when you're going to school, you know um, there are certain, like for instance, like say with programming, maybe joining the military, which I admire our soldiers. My dad was one, all that stuff. But at the same time, to go to fight for wars for people, we've got a military industrial complex, and we go into senseless wars. America's been doing this for a while. Vietnam War, we know that was senseless. Our Iraq War was senseless. A lot of people die in it, and are going to war, and there's other people profiting and making lots and lots of money off it, right? There's a whole system. Why did 9/11 happen? Why didn't intelligence catch it? Stuff like that. How was that? How did that slip by us? Okay, you know, just various things. We've got to awaken and open our eyes. Even programming women. Okay, you want to get married at a young age because you don't want to grow old and not have kids and be alone for the rest of your life. So if a woman kind of goes away from that, and says, like we have young people nowadays. I don't want to have kids. I can't afford them. What people are, and notice how the foreign installation is, like even Trump and JD Vance are talking about maybe offering women $5,000 to conceive. They're like thinking about coming up with systems and see how the foreign installation is coming at the women. We got to encourage them to have babies. Okay, as a foreign installation, and stop trying to keep it the system a certain way. So you fall in line with the way it's supposed to go. Yes, we want those young women getting married and everything, and then even that programming for women. I gotta have a husband. I gotta get married. I got, and you're always kind of chasing love. And but what is, a lot of poor ladies doing? Like, say they're on a dating site. Oh God, it's a mess. What do I choose from here? You know what I'm saying? Okay. And so when a woman, especially some of these young women, are like, you know what, I just want a break from this, not worry about a man, and pursue my own dreams. I'm going to get an education. They're getting nervous about that. Women are now more educated than men, they're saying, in America, and they're getting nervous about it. So now there's a negativity coming at those women. Oh, they have high standards, and the men are rebelling and turning into, alpha males here, you know, and everything. And then, these women are the ones that would like to have a nice man, are like, I can't find any. So there is a system. But yes, if a woman's like, I don't want to get married, I want to pursue my dreams, that there's an energy that comes for her, and then they're like, well, she's a feminist, and then they want to come at that, and they want to call her a feminazi or something. Okay, so that's all foreign installation stuff and everything, to keep everybody in line. Always the carrot in front of the donkey, trying to get to a certain living wage, to be able to survive. And then, of course, a dream that, yes, one day you could retire, get your Social Security check, have your 401k cash out, and live comfortably. And some people have managed to do that, but not everybody has. Then we have a lot of, obviously, as you know, a lot of seniors that only get a Social Security check. They've already ran out of their 401k, and they're just trying to keep alive. And then when it comes to the medical and the medication, and they want to take that away, okay, for an installation. So what do we do, with this system? Well, we've got to eliminate that mind. When Don Juan says they gave us their mind, and become aware of it. For instance, like, when it comes to television, think about in the 50s, they put that idiot box in all the homes. And a lot of people got hooked on it, where before maybe, well, they had radio, listen to radio, they would, be interacting with their families, but the programming and taking attention off and getting focused on shows. But one of the things, notice it's called television programming. Okay, there's programs you can watch on TV. Okay, then of course there was a lot of advertisements, like say you get home, turn on TV, they show some food, maybe an ad for KFC, and then that person goes, ta-da, here comes the second mind of the foreign installation. Let's go out, honey, and pick up some KFC. Okay, that's how it works. Programming. Or there's a car. Oh, that car. Look at that advertisement. Let's go to the car lot tomorrow. We need a new car. Programming. When we think of a businessman, cufflinks, cuffs. He puts a tie around his neck, tie, like a noose, like a leash, tie. He's tied down to that job. You might be like, yeah, I get a little paycheck, do a little business, all this will give you a little money here or there. Maybe he works in a cubicle, whatever, but he's got cufflinks on, cuffs. When we think of a cell phone, oh boy, that's when it really got real. Cell, like a prison. Yes, imprison the mind. They began it with television, okay, the programming, television programming, okay. Then they subtly tell you, the foreign installation subtly tells you the game, okay. But then we had a movie in the 90s. It was very interesting, and boy, it's become prophetic, and it's a documentary, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's The Matrix. When the internet was just beginning, and now a lot of people, when they think of that movie, Okay, that broke down the foreign installation pretty damn well too. It really, really did. And it gave some ways of how to break the programming, ways to do it. But notice it was pretty brutal for Neo. Neo begins to start questioning the system. He works in a cubicle, but he's a smart guy and he's realizing all is not as it seems. Carlos Castaneda was the same way. When he kind of at first he had his own programming, yeah, he's going to a university and everything, but Don Juan was able to do what we call break the mirror of self-reflection. He was able to shatter that for him, and he was able to show him a view of the universe, very expansive and everything. And psychedelics can do it. A lot of people in the 60s, and see, that's the thing. Even in the 60s, a lot of people were breaking the programming, they were doing all that stuff. Notice they started making all that illegal and everything, the psychedelics. Terrence McKenna back in the day, Ram Dass, all those guys. Okay, people were waking up, and there was a movement. People were awakening. There were also no war. We know that. But, certain thing, they had to throw something in. So here comes Manson to fuck up the entire hippie movement. Okay, that pretty much put an end to it. Okay, it's always something. They got to stop it. Kennedy, you know, and then Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. Certain ones that come to rebel against the foreign installation, and things happen. Absolutely. Absolutely. Things happen. There was even in Israel years ago, there was a certain leader that was working on peace with the Palestinians. They took care of that. There's always certain things. Nope, there's a certain status quo. We can't have things shake up the foreign installation. What can you do? This is where you got to be a spiritual gangster. That's what the hat says. We got to wake up individually. Okay, be aware of the program and everything. We know that everything is kind of creeping on us right now. Like I said, surveillance and all that, all kind of leading to control. Can America, more and more people, wake up in time? Oh, it's real hard, because as the programming began way back then, and it's been subtly creeping on people to now, where we're at, I sure hope so. It's, the American experiment is kind of a challenge at the moment. How people are going to wake up. They are doing it. There is hope, but we need more of it. Like the No Kings protests, for example, quite a few came out and everything. It doesn't even mean everybody is awake, but they got some kind of lick of sense that we got to stand up. But it's hard to say. I mean, now with AI coming in, that can take over, where it's going to be making all the decisions, and doing a lot of hardcore manipulation. It's going to be a tough one. The main thing you can do right now, is try to save yourself, and maybe try to educate people around you to open their eyes and everything. And really, one of the ways to do it is examine, why do you think the way you do? Why do you believe certain things the way you believe them? Okay, why, like culturally, like even, yes, down to your religious beliefs, your view of God. Is it one that is of your experiences, or have you sought out experiences, or are there certain things that were subtly programmed in you, and that has to do with your view? We have to fight that tooth and nail. Certain relationships, are they very trauma based all the time? Are you choosing partners really based on what is best for your soul? Or is it that other mind that is doing the choosing and walking you into karmic relationship after karmic relationship? Now, I could even go so far as to say, are our spirit guides sometimes part of the program? Like we cross over. I've questioned that. There are times I have as an individual. Like they're like, "Yep, let's go back to Earth. You have a mission. Okay, we got to go back out and help humanity and try to wake them up." Sometimes are the spirit guides even part of the program? That's a possibility. Sometimes I kind of sit with, and this is kind of where we want to strengthen our consciousness. So when we cross over, they want to throw that life review. Talk about the boss. giving you an annual review. You get a life review, okay, right? And we know this because there's a lot of people who've had NDEs, and then they're like, "Yep, yeah, you got to go back. You got to." Okay, is that part of the foreign installation too? Yes, the warrior. There is things in the books about called the eagle's gift. One of the things they talk about this, there's this great force and it looks like an eagle, and this is where it can devour the awareness. Okay, I've done all of this and then I lose my awareness, and then I'm coming back into the game, right? But one of the things, there is hope for the warrior, is they get the eagle's gift. That the eagle, instead of devouring their awareness and recycling them, I like to call it the recycle bin, the eagle lets them pass and they're free. They're free of the whole thing. Yes, it can be done, but there are certain techniques, and everything that, like recapitulation, kind of write out everything, from your life, your memories, break it down, but the programming must be broken. That's one of the big things. If we want to get the eagle's gift, it's almost like, I guess you could almost call it grace in some ways, like even when Jesus talks about grace. Okay, there is that. But we do, and of course we do want to do good things. So as I kind of say this, the game is rigged. Step outside of the craziness for a moment. There's a lot of craziness. I feel Democrat, Republican, whatever you want to call these damn labels. And one of the ways is to take the labels off yourself, because the labels are definitely about that other mind and stuff. Step outside of it for a minute and really examine it and stuff. We all know we're being manipulated. I think there's a point, that we're kind of getting it. Just like I said, cell phones. Come on, woo, and stuff and everything. And it's kind of funny because I feel like more people are stepping out. I see them. I see them walking about, doing things, looking to get nature and stuff like that. And definitely, nature is one of the best things you can do. It's calling us. It's calling us home. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm gonna be taking a walk to the park. There's a lovely garden out here that I like to visit. I'm gonna be doing that a little bit later today. But I want you to just kind of be aware of that other mind, what its likes are, what its dislikes are, what its belief system is, what things cause you fear, what things make you happy. Is it really your soul, or is it that other mind? Kind of check it out, be aware of it and everything. And it's kind of fascinating because even nowadays our algorithm only feeds into, it's like, is that feeding my soul? Is that alignment with my soul, this algorithm? Or is it feeding that mind to try to keep it in there so I can't get it out of it and everything? Be aware of the foreign installation, guys. Like I said, it's one bird, two wings. We never quite get ahead. Like we never quite get that living wage. We never quite get that good health care. We never, yeah. We got to be aware, regardless who's in office. Okay, we got to start being awake and aware. But the more people that wake up, that's the hope. That's what we need to happen. And is it going to happen? Is it? I believe inevitably people, the cracks are coming in, because I do believe spirit wants that. They're given the cracks bit by bit in the system so people will wake up to it. We call it Maya, illusion. It's a very powerful thing. Foreign installation, Maya, it's all the same thing. It really is deep down all the same thing, and we got to wake up. Period. Be aware. Think about it. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you support what you support? Is it really you, your soul doing it? Or were you taught and told to be that way? Is that what you ended up gravitating to? Are you fearful of, becoming who you really are meant to be? Or do you fear that? You will have to, when you wake up, you will lose people. You will lose people. You may even you may get divorced. Your kids may think you've lost your mind. That's one of the things, when you wake up, people think you've lost it. But you will also end up bumping into people who are just like you, and everything. Once you get on that frequency, you will find others. Okay? You are not alone. Have a good one.